You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. When we look at the long history of America's justice system, one thing becomes clear. The system has often been weaponized not to protect justice but to uphold racial inequality. We can trace this reality through a century of legal battles where black men, especially those who achieved fame, wealth or power, were targeted by laws that were never meant to be applied the way they were. One of the most infamous examples comes from the year 1912. Just 2 years after the Mann Act was signed into law, a black man named Jack Johnson, the very first black heavyweight boxing champion of the world, was charged and convicted under that statute. Johnson had broken no real crime that any reasonable interpretation of justice could uphold. His so-called crime was nothing more than his preference for white women as partners, his refusal to bow to racist expectations, and his unapologetic success in a country that wanted to see him fail. The Mann Act was drafted to stop the organized trafficking of people across state lines for immoral purposes such as prostitution. Its language was vague, written in a way that left too much room for interpretation. And almost immediately, that vagueness became a weapon in the hands of a racist society. Instead of targeting true criminals, the law was used against Jack Johnson for living his personal life on his own terms. He was accused of transporting a white woman across state lines for immoral purposes. But in reality, he had simply been in a consensual relationship with her. The government could not stand the image of a proud black man defeating white men in the boxing ring, earning global respect and openly dating women society said he wasn't supposed to touch. So they used the Mann Act as their tool. Jack Johnson was convicted, publicly humiliated, and forced into exile. His story became a stain on American justice that took more than a century to address. Fast forward. At the end of his first term in office, President Donald Trump finally issued a long overdue pardon for Jack Johnson. It was a moment celebrated by many. Trump acknowledged that Johnson had been wrongfully convicted under a racist application of the law, and he symbolically cleared Johnson's name.
One of the greatest fighters, Lennox was just telling me, one of the greatest fighters ever. The early 1900s. Today, as president, I've issued an executive grant of clemency, a full pardon, posthumously, to John Arthur Jack Johnson. He was known as Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion of the world, a truly great fighter, had a tough life. They say he violated the Mann Act, and he had a conviction that occurred during a period of tremendous racial tension in the United States more than a century ago. Johnson served 10 months in federal prison for what many view as a racially motivated injustice.
For the Johnson family, it was recognition that their loved one had been unfairly targeted. For America, it was supposed to be a sign that we had learned something from our ugly history. But here is the truth: a single pardon does not erase a system. A single pardon does not mean the battle against systemic racism has been won. And as long as we continue to misuse the very same laws against other black men, that pardon remains hollow. This is where we come to the case of Robert Sylvester Kelly, better known to the world as R. Kelly. R. Kelly, like Jack Johnson, is a black man who rose to fame and fortune in a society that often resents black success. Like Johnson, he became a global figure, respected, envied, and also targeted. And like Johnson, he now sits in prison convicted under the Mann Act. A law that should never have been applied to his situation in the way that it was. Let us not sugarcoat it. The Mann Act was misused against R. Kelly just as it was misused against Jack Johnson over 100 years ago. The statute was supposed to address the intentional trafficking of individuals across state lines for exploitative purposes. Yet in Kelly's case, it was twisted to cover consensual relationships, travel arrangements, and accusations that do not fit the law's original meaning. This is exactly the same playbook that was used against Johnson in 1912. A vague law was stretched beyond its intended scope in order to target a black man who had become larger than life. Johnson's relationships with white women were criminalized because they offended the racist establishment. Kelly's relationships too have been reframed through the lens of this outdated law, and prosecutors have once again chosen to twist words like transportation and immorality into weapons of mass destruction aimed at a black man's life and legacy. So let's ask the critical question: if President Trump was right to pardon Jack Johnson, recognizing that his conviction was not about true justice but about systemic racism, how can we ignore the exact same injustice in the case of R. Kelly? If Trump's pardon for Johnson was meant to show courage, fairness and a stand against racial targeting, then leaving R. Kelly to rot in prison under the very same unfounded claims to have broken the very same law makes that pardon meaningless. It renders it nothing more than a symbolic gesture, a photo opportunity and a single battle won while the war rages on. Trump cannot claim the moral high ground in correcting the wrong against Johnson while ignoring the parallel wrong happening right now to R. Kelly. Because history does not just repeat itself. It echoes loud and clear for anyone who dares to listen. Let us put it plainly. The Mann Act has always been a racist tool. Its very first high-profile use was to take down Jack Johnson. More than a century later, its modern use has been to take down R. Kelly. The faces may change, the decades may pass, but the script remains the same. A vague law applied selectively, used disproportionately against black men whose success and audacity make them easy targets for a biased system. When Jack Johnson was convicted, the establishment cheered. They had put him in his place. But history proved them wrong, and Trump's pardon acknowledged that. When R. Kelly was convicted, the same system cheered again, patting itself on the back as though it had delivered justice. But history will prove them wrong too. And if Trump or any future president refuses to step in, it means we have learned nothing. This is bigger than R. Kelly as a person. Just as the fight for Jack Johnson's pardon was bigger than one man, this fight too is about principle. It is about whether we allow laws to be misused to satisfy public anger and political agendas. It is about whether black men will forever remain vulnerable to laws twisted to fit narratives rather than facts. It is about whether America can ever be honest about its history and consistent in its pursuit of justice. When Trump pardoned Johnson, he said he was correcting a historic wrong. But if he refuses to address R. Kelly's case, then what he corrected was only cosmetic. It would mean he patched up one crack in the wall while leaving the entire foundation rotten. The Mann Act cannot be a relic of racism in one century and a tool of justice in another. It cannot be racist in 1912 but righteous in 2021, especially when used the very same way. Its misuse is the same, its injustice is the same, and the racial double standard is the same. If Trump wants his legacy on racial justice to mean anything, he must extend the same recognition to R. Kelly that he extended to Jack Johnson too little too late in his demise. Otherwise, history will remember his pardon as a hollow gesture. One that made headlines but failed to address the ongoing war against systemic racism, especially against the famous black successes. Because at the end of the day, this is not about winning a single battle. It is about winning the war. And until the war is won, until laws like the Mann Act stop being misapplied against black men, dear Trump, no victory can be claimed. R. Kelly's conviction under the Mann Act is a perfect mirror image of Jack Johnson's conviction. The only difference being that in this case, it's black women being used as pawns. Otherwise, we see the same misuse of language, the same twisting of intent, the same racial undertones. If Johnson deserved a pardon, which he clearly did, then Kelly deserves one too. And denying him that pardon does not make the system look fair. It makes it look hypocritical. 100 years from now, do we want another president issuing another pardon for R. Kelly, admitting once again that America got it wrong? Or do we want to correct the wrong now while the man still leaves, and while justice can still be served? The choice is clear. Trump's pardon of Jack Johnson was the beginning of a battle. But unless he extends that same principle to R. Kelly, he has not fought the war. He has only picked a convenient moment to look righteous while leaving the real fight untouched. History is watching. And just as Johnson's conviction was remembered as an injustice, so too will R. Kelly's be remembered unless true leadership steps in. If Trump wants to be remembered not just as a man who pardoned a single black hero of the past but as someone who stood against the ongoing misuse of racist laws, then the path is clear. He must acknowledge the truth. R. Kelly, like Jack Johnson, was wrongfully convicted under the Mann Act. And until that truth is recognized, America remains guilty. Not just of one injustice but of repeating the same injustice across generations. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.